So, a couple of days ago, I did a video, audio-wise, where I talked about looking back at some of the moments and clues and hints that led us up to issue 230, where the infamous Mecca Sally situation occurred. And I talked about how a lot of these hints and clues were basically kind of making us speculate as to what the cover for issue 230 was alluding to. Some of us, like myself, thought, it could be potentially Sally fusing with Nicole into a new being temporarily, one time, if you will, to stop the Death Egg, to destroy the roboticizer. We thought maybe it could mean Nicole was going to sacrifice herself. There was a lot of speculation going on. But also, there was a lot of realization when we saw the silhouette on the cover of 231 of exactly what the cover of issue 230 was alluding to. However, somebody on YouTube who commented on that video I did, Misty Catherine, I think her name is, Misty Catherine, basically said that she believes that because of what Ian Flynn did, which she considers the biggest blemish as a professional writer that he could get at that time, if not currently, because of what Ian Flynn did to Sally with the whole Mecca Sally deal, that she believes, if not thinks, that this is what led to Ian Flynn no longer penciling or writing Sally-focused or Sally solo or Sally team-up stories, afterwards in the soft retcon and reboot. And one has to think maybe that she might have a point. I mean, when you look at Spark of Life, you would think, Ian Flynn's going to have his hands all over something like that, right? Nope. Ian Flynn handed it off, or was handed off, to Aaliyah Baker. And there were some other stories that were pinned as backup stories in the main comic that were not penned by Ian Flynn. They were penned by either Aaliyah or somebody else. And mostly the people that would pin them were female. No offense in that, but they were mostly female writers. And I think most of it was Aaliyah's doing. And I think a few male writers here and there as well, but it was mostly Aaliyah that was kind of in the lead. But could what Misty said here be true, when it comes to that? Did Ian Flynn pretty much blow any chance he would have at writing any other character, mostly female-wise, when he decided to mechanize Sally Acorn in issue 230 and continue it on up until 247, along with issues from Sonic Universe to, add to that? You have to wonder, you have to think and kind of speculate if maybe that was the case. Because if it was, then maybe Ian Flynn hopefully has realized if he did get that notice or get that discussion of we're gonna have Aaliyah start writing for Sally and Bunnie and the female characters instead of you because of what you did. You have to wonder if maybe Ian Flynn kind of regrets that now or regretted it then. And I'm sure he gets asked the question a lot too. I'm sure doing his Bumblecast Q&As and even doing convention appearances virtually or physically, doing those kind of Q&As, he gets asked that question or something similar. And I'm pretty sure he tries to come up with in his opinion, his own or his point of view is a very reasonable answer. But you have to wonder if what Misty says here is indeed true. Did Ian Flynn pretty much cause himself to lose responsibilities of writing stories involving Sally? Because this is what Misty says. This is what Misty says about a day ago, and I quote, "Mecca Sally is the biggest blemish on Ian Flynn's career as a professional writer. I think the backlash to that story is part of the reason Sally-focused stories were assigned to a woman writer post-reboot." And when she's talking about the backlash, of course, again, she's talking about and alluding to how a lot of fans, including myself, and I think even her and many others, felt about the whole Mecca Sally thing. I mean, it's one thing to try to, as Ian Flynn wanted to do, try to freshen the character up, try to redeem her in the eyes of a lot of fans that didn't like her, as well as in the process try to rebuild the freedom fighters, from the ground up, so that the newer fans can have a better understanding of who they are and what they're about. But the backlash overall, despite, some people liking the story, the overall story arc as a whole, the backlash wasn't good. And I think, honestly, if I'm going to be honest with you guys on this, I think people at Sega of America, and even some at Sega of Japan, they didn't like the idea that Ian Flynn had done this. It's very similar, if not akin in some ways, to what Ken Penders tried to do. You see, Ken Penders, as we all know, tried to kill Sally off in Endgame, which is issues 47 to 50. But Sega, thanks to fan backlash, even before that, I should say, stepped in and said, no, you can't do that. You can't kill her off because she's not your character. She's our character. So you have to wonder if maybe Ian Flynn had a similar kind of backlash. Maybe not as bad as what Ken had, but just enough to where maybe, he was taking off writing duties when it came to writing for female characters. You have to think about that. You have to wonder if maybe because of the fact that, as Misty points out, a lot of the Sally-focused stories, solo stories, team-up stories and all that, you have to think if what she's saying is true, that because of what Ian did, all of those are now assigned to a woman writer, like Aaliyah Baker, Evan Stanley. I think Evan was coming on board at that time, as well as others. You have to think maybe Ian Flynn made a mistake in doing what he did and doing it for so long. I mean, here's what I'm thinking. I'm sure that if Ian Flynn would have kept, the Mecca Sally situation short and sweet, only for a couple of issues, had her restored, and move on, then maybe he would have still been writing for, he'd still be writing for characters like Sally and Bunnie in the long run. Even Nicole, maybe he'd still be writing for them. But that isn't the case. But you have to wonder, you have to think again, did Ian Flynn shoot himself in the foot because of what he did and the backlash that came along with it? You have to wonder. Because I'm sure Ian Flynn, if what Misty is saying is to be believed, or speculated to be believed, if what she's saying is to be believed, you have to wonder how Ian Flynn felt about it when he was told by the higher-ups, these women, Aaliyah, Evan, so-and-so and so-and-so, they're going to start taking over writing for the female characters of the book, and you're just going to write the rest of it, if you will. You're going to write the rest of the book, but they're going to mainly write for the female characters, or at least make sure the female characters are treated better than before. You have to wonder what his thought process was when he probably got, he got that information given to him, that basically he was told that this was going to be the change that he was going to go with from a creative writing perspective. You have to really wonder. I mean, I'll be honest, as the old saying goes, I, along with anybody else, would have loved to have been a fly on that wall to see exactly what was going on when the decision was made to have Ian Flynn just be mainly the primary, head writer of the book. But when it came to female characters in the book, you have to really think, you have to really wonder if you were a fly on the wall during that conversation or that meeting. You have to just imagine what his reaction would be when they told him all the female-led stories were going to be done by female writers from now on, and that any any females in his stories, you know, the female writers were going to supervise him on how these characters would be written. You have to really think about that because, you know, Misty does bring up a good point. It is kind of ironic that when you think about it, all of a sudden the Sally stories, the Bunnie stories, the Nicole stories, you know, all these stories with female characters solo or whatever, or even part of Ian's main story arc, were all treated and written differently than before. It makes you wonder. It makes you really wonder. But what do you guys think? How do you feel about that? Do you think Misty Catherine has a point? Do you think maybe she's right about it? Or do you think maybe we're just drawing for straws? Because don't you think it's a little coincidental and ironic that that happened? What do you guys think? Comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. And I will talk to y'all later. God bless. Take care. I am out.